The Age of Strife, also known as Old Night, was a destructive, anarchic and regressive time period prior to the forming of the Imperium. It followed the Dark Age of technology, which by all accounts was an age of great prosperity. The Age of Strife began in M25 and ended in M30. History. There were multiple factors that led to the end of the Age of technology and the beginning of the Age of Strife. One of the earliest factors was the revolt of the Men of Iron, which devastated the human race. The revolt of the Men of Iron heralded the end of the Age of technology. However, the first major factor that began the Age of Strife proper was the sudden appearance of psychers on every human world. This was compounded by massive and persistent warp storms erupting around the Sol system and other parts of the galaxy. In addition, records report that a great war with the machines began, with humanity battling vast robotic armies. Psychers had first appeared within humanity towards the end of the Age of technology. While persecuted as witches on many planets, on the most enlightened and progressive worlds, they were at first accepted and allowed to explore and develop their powers. As it happened, uncontrolled psychers proved to be a dangerous threat to humanity, and many worlds fell under hellish dominance, as the minds of these psychers became the gateways through which warp entities were able to enter the material universe. Only worlds which had rigorously suppressed psychers survived this fate. The Age of technology ended catastrophically, as widespread insanity, demonic possession, and interhuman war suddenly took hold throughout the human worlds. With the emergence of warp storms through most of the galaxy, travel through the warp became more and more dangerous until all but impossible, isolating many planets. Several worlds, particularly Terra, dependent on the export of other worlds to feed their enormous populations, suffered massive famine. Several alien races such as orcs, sensing mankind's weakness, raided and devastated many human-colonized worlds. Mankind battled itself, demons, and aliens. Over the long period of isolation, new species of humans began to evolve, adapting to suit their new environment, becoming the abhuman race's notable examples were the ratlings stunted by thousands of years of inbreeding on worlds with climates and environments even more conducive to human life than ancient Terra, the Ogrins harsh, cold, and barren worlds, and the Squats the barren high-gravity worlds towards the galactic core. The Age of Strife was a time of anarchy, destruction, and regression, lasting thousands of years. Mankind's successes in the Age of technology were lost, and many human worlds regressed to the level of barbarity. However, some isolated pockets of human civilization managed to survive and even thrive, mainly those worlds and star systems which were, or became, completely self-sufficient in all vital aspects. Sublight travel was still possible, and some star systems had several colonies to trade and to share resources. Warp jumps could be made on occasion, as the storms waxed and waned. Some few fortunate star systems were even quite close to each other, and tiny pocket empires were formed. Two notable examples of pocket empires were the domain of the Intrex and the Squat homeworlds. Sol system. Terra and the rest of the solar system was surrounded by terrible warp storms, isolating the human homeworld for several thousand years. Control of the solar system shifted constantly between Terra and Mars during the first half of the Age of Strife. By the 28th millennium, almost all traces of civilization on Earth were long gone. Instead, techno-barbarians battled one another over the scraps of the ancient culture. Little information remains from this dark time, but it is known that warlords such as Dalmoth King of High Brazil, Caligan of Ursh, Cardinal Tang of the Indonesic bloc, the half-mad half-genius Nathan Dume of the Pan-Pacific Empire, and Dive al-Shan ruled during this age. Other known nations include Frank, Germani, Gyptus, Marika, the Nordafric conclaves, the Terawat clan, and Albion. Another race mentioned are the Nordic people. Terra became a battleground fought over by warlords and techno-barbarian hordes. This only ended as a great warlord, later to be known as the Emperor, used the first genetically modified humans, little more than a unified force of techno-barbarians, to conquer the planet. Founding the Imperium, he set about creating his Primarchs who would lead his forces in the Great Crusade. Unfortunately, all of them were somehow spirited away by the Chaos Gods, who, although unable to destroy the infant Primarchs, still managed to scatter them around the galaxy. Retaining the Primarchs' DNA samples to continue production of genetically engineered warriors, in the Wars of Unification the Emperor used these early Space Marines known as the Thunder Warriors to conquer and unify Terra at last. Mars. Mars underwent a very different transformation. After brief anarchy, the tech priests of the cult Mechanicus emerged victorious over the mutants and unified their homeworld. The tech priests then visited Terra, sometimes raiding it for remnants of technology they could take home and adapt to their purposes. The tech priests were appalled at the destruction on Terra and saw nothing worth saving. Instead, the Martians studied the warp and after many lifetimes learned to detect lulls in the warp storms. At the same time, the immense fighting machines known as Titans were created. For over 1,000 years, the cult Mechanicus watched and waited. Whenever a break in the warp storms occurred, an expedition was sent, complete with a full Titan legion and thousands of servitors and tech priests. Some of these expeditions were lost in the warp or died on faraway worlds. Others succeeded in establishing forge worlds, replicas of Mars. Broken messages were transmitted to Mars, but it was not until the time of the Great Crusade that the Forge worlds and Mars would be reunited. The Outer System. Little is known about the state of the outer solar system during this period. It is known that a polity existed on the moons of Saturn whose military arm was the Saturnine fleet. The exact extent of this nation is unknown, but it joined the Imperium at the end of the Age of Strife. Notwithstanding this union, the Saturnine fleet retained a separate hierarchy and its own unique traditions up to the time of the Horus Heresy. Another Saturn-based culture, that of the Ringers, opposed imperial rule and were defeated by the Space Marines. Conclusion. The warp storms continued to increase for a reason, the birth of Slaanesh, caused by the fall of the Eldar. As Slaanesh was finally born, the warp storms ended with a single storm of massive proportions. As the warp was calmed, the Emperor was able to lead his Thunder Warriors, and later 20 Space Marine legions from unified Terra to reunite humanity, beginning the Great Crusade that would create the Imperium. The Age of the Imperium officially began with the Emperor's conquest of Terra in the Unification Wars, but in the view of many, truly began with the Great Crusade. Thank you for listening to this entry from Warhammer 40,000 Lexicanum.